Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another edition of today's Top Leaders. I am so excited to have you here along with me today because we are talking to the amazing Deb Porter. Deb, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Jen, it's good to be here.
So good to have you. And so remember, everybody, here at today's Top Leaders, we are getting into the real stuff that's impacting you as a leader beyond what you're doing in the workplace Monday through Friday. There's so many things that are impacting you that are peripheral to coming in, getting the job done, and going home. And so there's different things that are happening. And as those of you have been following along, you know we've had different guests on talking about things like your health or your stress or dealing with a number of different things related to your employees, which is why I've invited Deb to come join us today. Let me tell you a little bit about her and why you're going to want to listen up to today's episode. So Deborah Porter is a sought after influential voice and media contributor on parenting, motherhood, and work-life balance. Her work helps to reduce attrition and the cost of turnover for businesses among working parents by navigating the demands and pressures of the intersection of work, life, and family. Deb, thanks for doing what you're doing. There's a lot of working parents out there.
40% of the workforce is working parents. So it's a lot of us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot for sure. And then I think about like all the different ages and groups and whatnot in that too. So are there any statistics about how many people who are working parents have like little kids at home versus teenagers? Anything on that?
I'm sure there are. I'm not too
Okay.
familiar with those. But you think about parenting and caregiving, and July is National Sandwich Generation Month. So
Oh.
there's just so much going on, and so many of us are caught right in the middle of all of that.
Okay, so for those who may not understand what a sandwich generation is, can you help us understand? Let's define that.
Yeah, so the sandwich generation are generally folks that are still raising children in their home, but also have parents over the age of 65 that need additional support.
Mhm.
And what we have found is that most of these folks are in their 40s. Not only do they have children at home, but they may even be financially helping a young adult who has recently launched or is trying to launch still.
Yes.
And then still, supporting and helping their aging parents. So, you know, the demands of that, you would think that that alone is a full-time job, but all these folks also have full-time jobs.
Yeah, right.
So a lot. It's a lot.
It is. It is. It's a lot for sure. I'm in that category. I'm definitely there. All the pieces and parts,
Yeah.
So, and it's, so when you're talking about that 40% of the workforce are working parents. So for the leaders, because that's who we're speaking to here, right, on today's Top Leaders,
Yes.
let's talk about what's on your heart, Deb. What do you want these leaders to know and understand about the fact that, almost half of their workforce, and I bet there's some companies, I bet some of them, it's more than 40% are working,
100%.
for sure.
Yeah.
So what's coming forward
Yeah.
from your heart to these leaders?
So the first thing that really comes to mind for me and really is on my heart is to let leaders know that working parents want to do their absolute best.
Mm.
They really do. They want to give you all that they have. They want to show up for everything you need them at. They want to be there. They want to be giving their all. But they've got this thing that they're also tethered to that you don't see it when they're at work, right? So the idea is you're at work, focus on work. Being a parent, it just doesn't work like that. Because when something happens at school or when the little one is sick, all of that impacts how we show up. And so the first thing I would want leaders to know is they really do want to give you their all. They really do want to be there and show up in a really big way. But we've got to understand that there are things sometimes even beyond the parent, the worker's control, that's pulling at them at that moment. And so the idea of having some flexibility, some understanding, being aware that there are going to be unforeseen circumstances and things come up at the last minute, just keep those things in mind.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, and it would be interesting too to think of how many leaders have kids themselves, right? Like I think of all the clients that I've done coaching with and training, and there's a high majority of them that have children, right? I mean, at various ages and whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
they've, so it's kind of interesting. So here's my thought is like, Well, if you, as a leader, if your child is really sick and you need to go to the hospital or, or stay home for, whatever, I think about my little Sarah puking 17 times in like 2 hours. I'm like, where is it coming from?
There's nothing left. What are you doing?
Exactly. Sorry, people, we're keeping it real on today's Top
That's
Leader.
right. That's right.
Oh, life, we love it. So anyhow, but it's like, okay, like you yourself, Mrs. or Mr. Leader, like you've also had you yourself have dealt with this, right? And so what's some of those thoughts that you have around like, yeah, I get it in my life, but I need my people to do their job. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the hope here is that, and really what many of us in this space are really pushing for and encouraging leaders to do is make sure you're taking all of your parental leave, right? We find many times that leaders will, for the sake of the good or for the sake of the team, oh, I'll just take a few weeks and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
Well, then you're sending a message to your folks, can't take all my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotta take a little bit of time, but I gotta get back. So be the example that it is okay to be gone those 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever is being offered. But be the example, right? Be human, right? Share in a meeting. You know what? Little one woke up with a fever today. I'm going to be out of here a little bit early, folks. I got to get to a doctor's appointment. Make it normal. Make it part of workplace culture to not only be an employee or a worker or a leader, but to also be a parent and to be able to handle those things well. Just handle those things well. Just make it normal. Make it human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A thought that's coming to mind is about our biases that we have, right? I mean, things that we don't even know that we have biases toward, right? But things that are happening in our lives, and we're almost like blind to it, and not ignorant to it, but just blind to it. It's like, oh, I don't.
It's a blind spot. Yeah, it's a blind spot for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, what can leaders do to understand about their biases when it comes to the working parents?
Well, I think, tuning in to conversations like this, right? I think making sure that you've set up or you've created the space and the opportunity for there to be some type of parents or caregivers or parents and caregivers employee resource group, because there are many times we just don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So if you create the space and the opportunity for there to be growth and learning and support around those roles, then everybody gets to grow, right? Everybody gets to understand it a little bit better. It becomes more, people are more aware of it, right? It's on people's radar. And then you create a community of support right there at work. So it's no longer taboo. I don't have to hide that I've got a sick kid because there's a community of us that are working parents that are supporting each other, that understand it and that know it. So that would be one of the first things I would say. Do you have an employee resource group for parents and caregivers? Is it a group that is supported? If you're a leader and you're a parent, do you attend the resource group, right? Your presence there says a lot as well. So I think one way to begin to break down the things that we don't know is to really create these spaces and opportunities for all of us to step in it together and learn a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Deb, I know in some of your work, you go into companies, you actually help them to establish these employer resource groups, right?
So most of the organizations that I support already have these groups in place. Many of them, they're new groups. And so they're like, we've got this group, but now what?
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
what are we doing? Right.
Okay.
So I'll come in and talk about several different things. In fact, I'm doing a webinar for an organization on the sandwich generation, right? We're going to talk about, I'm doing one for, how to prepare now for the empty nest. No matter how old your child is, it's never too early to begin thinking about the empty nest. Because here's the thing, the goal is we do want them to leave, right? We love them, but at some point we do want them to launch and leave. So, wrapping our hands around that. Work-life balance is always top of mind. It's become this catchy little phrase, but it really is a constant struggle. Let me give you an example. I had a mom that I was working with, and this particular morning, 7:45, she wakes up from not sleeping much that night for horrible toothache. She's got an infant that wakes up with a low-grade fever. She's got a teenager looking across the kitchen counter at her, kind of scout, you know how teenagers sometimes kind of just that scowl. But she's got to be on a video meeting in 20 minutes. So what does someone in that situation do, right? I don't feel well. I've got a kid that's not feeling well. I've got a teenager that's on their way out the door heading to school. And so the idea here for her was, and the saving grace in this for her was that she had a supervisor, she had a manager that trusted her to be able to make the decision of what the priority was that day. And so her team was able to carry on with that meeting without a hitch in her absence. She was able to get that baby to a doctor. She was able to get to the dentist for herself. So the idea of trying to create some opportunity for autonomy to allow people to really be able to make the decisions that are best for them goes a long way. And these are the folks that, according to studies, these are the folks that are 20 times more likely to stay at their place of employment. Oh, right. So, right. And that's according to, most of us know about best places to work, right? They do all of these different studies letting us know what this looks like. And one of the figures is that they're 20 times more likely to stay if you can help working parents reduce the stress and the overwhelm by giving them a bit more autonomy to get done what needs to get done. They're 20 times more likely to stay. They're 10 times more likely to give extra. They are 35 more times likely to recommend their employer as a great place to work. Those are real numbers.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, and I think about like with this gal that you're speaking of, that she had a team of people that it sounds like this is normalized. Like, we got it. No big deal. Right. And there may be another day where somebody else on the team needs some help and she can jump in and help cover for that person or do whatever it is. So I love that. It sounds like a really great culture of helping each other to have success through these things.
Right. And, she has said to me, if the work culture where I am employed was not what it is, I don't think I would even be there. If this opportunity and these scenarios, when they come up, if I didn't have the freedom to be able to do what I know was most important. And let me tell you, if you've ever woken up in the morning with a toothache, that quickly becomes priority. You can't even think straight if your tooth is throbbing, let alone you sit through a whole meeting, right? So it's just important that we get thinking about this a little differently. There's no way we can leave our parenting hat at the door when we show up at work. That's not possible. We're not going back to 2019, right? That's not going to happen. 2020 revealed a whole lot. The pandemic hit and a whole lot was revealed. And working parents are loud now. And they're loud and they're making decisions that are best serving them and their families.
Yeah, I love how there are so many people who are at home. They get kids running around. They're in meetings, or the whole one where like the naked child comes running through. Like, whoa, okay, here we go. Right? Because
that's Billy. That's Billy. Yeah,
right, exactly. Because at home, it's like no big deal. He's used to running around after he gets out of the bath.
Exactly.
But now, hi, welcome Zoom into my life. Here we are. Right?
And, that's one of the things that working parents are dealing with. One of the other things that working parents deal with is this whole idea of imposter syndrome, both at work and at home, right? We're feeling like we're not really the best at work because we're thinking about home and trying to handle stuff at home. And then we're at home and we're on our computers and on our phones and returning emails. So there's just this stress of, I'm not really 100% in either space.
Right.
I'm not really 100%. I'm not really giving my best in either because I'm constantly feeling pulled. And so having folks like me to come in, to share, to speak, to give tips, to give strategies really does lessen and lower the feeling of overwhelm and just the stress of that intersection of work, life, and family.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally makes sense. So when it comes to the employee resource group, if there's a leader who's watching this and maybe there are different groups that they're already aware of, in the company, but if something like that doesn't exist, do you recommend that the leader brings it up, tries to do something about it? Or is it better if it comes from the employees? Like what are you noticing in that area?
To have a leader be involved in the creating or forming of an ERG is gold.
Okay.
right? Because you've already got an advocate, you've already got an
Yes.
ally
Hopefully.
in a position of
Yeah.
influence that can really help with moving that along. So if you are a working parent as a leader, yeah, if you send out an email and just ask a few folks, anybody interested in this, coming from a leader, it means a lot.
Okay. All right.
Carries weight. It carries
Yeah.
weight.
Okay, cool. Because I was thinking about how sometimes in companies, when initiatives come from the employees, it's like that swell, right? It has a different feel. But you're suggesting that regarding a parenting ERG, that it's better, or it could be better if a leader leads out on that. Okay.
Definitely helpful,
Okay.
extremely helpful, because really that's the thing that working parents are looking for. They're looking for an ally in the organization, in a leadership position, to bring some, for lack of a better word, validity to a group like this, or understanding as to why this is important and why it needs to be supported, not just with bodies and members, but with resources, right? To be able to bring folks in, to be able to support and help. And most organizations will combine this. They'll do parents and caregivers together, because a lot of what one is doing, the other is doing, maybe for a different family member, maybe not a child, but normally it's a parents and caregivers employee resource group.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about caregivers for a little bit. So again, just for baseline, what do you mean by caregivers? Let's put some definition on that.
So when we're talking about caregivers, this is an umbrella term, right? That can mean several things. You can be caring for an aging parent. You can be a parent, but caring for a child that is differently abled. And so maybe a child that is not, in mainstream school. It could be you caring for any relative or someone that you are responsible for. So it's a real umbrella term that can mean a lot of different things depending on the family dynamic.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Because I was just thinking about that. I thought, oh, it's at some point my mom will retire, and I keep thinking she's going to move in with us. I mean, she's capable, right?
Yeah.
But she's in her early 70s. She's loving working, so she doesn't want to stop. She does social work stuff, and I'm like, you're going to work till you die. She's like, might as well, So, but I'm hoping at some point she'll retire and kind of slow down a little bit in some ways. But I think about that, I go, oh, good heavens. Ugh, what does that mean?
Yeah.
To me and my household, and and not just, oh yeah, it's going to be fun to have grandma around, you know what I mean? But what does that mean, right? Because it's a whole different type of doctor's appointments, or whatever that impact is. And
those conversations are better had sooner than later. And it can be challenging when we have independent parents who really love their lives as is. It can be challenging to have to really broach this topic of, well, mom, what are you thinking? Dad, what are you thinking this is going to look like? Or, understanding and knowing a little bit more about their doctors, their finances, right? So those are conversations that are better had sooner than later and in small doses, as opposed to getting to the moment where now a decision has to be made. And we've not broached these topics at all.
So it's really interesting. Thanks, Deb. Oh my God, I gotta have some conversations with Grandma Lulu. Okay.
Just a couple, just kind of drop them here and there.
Sure. Awesome. So, but also what's interesting about what you're saying is, like, I'm just envisioning this leader who's like, for the love, like, I'm trying to just get a project done. I'm trying to get whatever it is that I do in my business, like trying to get it out the door, right? And I got little Billy over here doing the things, and teenager or whatever. And now I've got to think about like what my parents' doctors are like. It feels heavy. It feels like a lot, so
it is. It is a lot. And this is the dilemma for work-life balance, right? Because many times when you hear the word balance, you're thinking even, right? You're thinking some kind of even distribution. That's not what we're talking about in this dynamic. What we're talking about is correct proportions of one item to the other. So some days that looks like this, some days that looks like this, some days something's dropped, right? So it's the idea of understanding what is most important right now, And how do I give my attention to what's most important
Mm-hmm.
and allow the other things to be handled by other capable people?
Mm-hmm.
And that may be on either side. I always tell people there are so many things that have to get done in a day, but what things do your hands actually have to touch? Your hands don't have to touch every single thing of what has to be done. Certain things your hands have to be on, not everything. And being able to just determine what that list is alone
Mm-hmm.
can somewhat lighten the load, right? Yes, we need groceries in the house. Do I need to go push the cart to get the groceries? No, you do not.
Right.
Right? Yes, my kid has to have these particular items, for school. Does that have to be done by me, by these hands? No, it does not.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
understanding and knowing the difference between that can begin to lighten the load a little bit.
Yeah, I love that, because I think likely there are a lot of leaders who are listening to this who are thinking, but it comes down to me. Like, I'm the one who has to get this done. And I know particular that's the case for the women, like I got to do it all, And so I have a very productive and helpful husband in my household. He's a great dad and loves to be, hands-on and whatnot. And so I'm not saying that's a universal thing everywhere.
Understood.
But what I'm saying is that I feel like sometimes there's this like, well, I don't know, it's the classic, what are we having for dinner? And it's like,
yeah,
everybody looks at mom. It's just like, what?
And we're like, ah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
So here's the thing. What we're talking about now is the division of labor in the home. And these are conversations that are normally had when somebody flips a lid, right? This is not normally that we're sitting down talking about this in a very calm way. We're talking about it when that one additional thing is asked and, we blow up. There's an author, Eve Rotsky, who has written a book called Fair Play, the Fair Play Method. And the whole purpose of the Fair Play Method is how are you dividing labor in your home? What does that look like? Is it intentional or is it just kind of haphazard? And she talks about this moment when she's on her way to a client to get them to sign a contract. She's got the contract and the pen in her lap, and she's got the phone sitting over here and it's ringing, and she gets a text from her husband that says, "Man, I can't believe you didn't get blueberries when you were at the store yesterday." it just sent her to the moon. Like, it's just blueberries. What's the big deal? But the point was, I cannot do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Fair Play Method, I'm actually a Fair Play Method certified facilitator, but it's an actual process of how are you having this conversation with your significant other about the things that need to be done at home? Because as women, we know there are a lot of things that are invisible, right? It's just this invisible mental load of all the things that we're carrying. Okay, the weather's about to change, so I need to change over the kids' closet from summer to fall. Okay, they outgrew those clothes. They're not going to, like, it's just all these things that we're keeping up with. So it's not even just the what's for dinner, but it's all the other stuff that we're not even talking about that's landing on her shoulders. And so I highly recommend this book called The Fair Play Method. There's also a documentary out. I always encourage couples to watch this documentary together because the dynamic that's going on, I think it's on Netflix, maybe Prime. I don't know. I can't remember all of it. But it's called the Fair Play Method documentary. Eve Rotsky, it's based on her book, The Fair Play Method. Well worth, I think it's maybe 90 minutes, an hour and 90 minutes. Well worth your time to watch.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And as you're talking about that too, I was just thinking about how, as a leader, understanding that you've got a good percentage of your employees, they're going to be juggling a whole ton load of things, right? And so that doesn't mean like, oh, well, I can't give them more work. Well, whatever falls within the job falls within the job, but just being aware of, right, that these things are impacting, right? Because again, I think there's going to be some biases from the leader. They're like, oh yeah, I'm the one who has sent that. Why didn't you pick up the blueberries?
Right. And here's the thing. Even as that is going on in the office, making sure that folks understand the priority. Because when you begin to just kind of pile on, I need this, it's helpful to know, what, this has to rise to the top. This is the one that I need first, because it can be challenging if you're just continually being given the stuff without understanding the order of importance. And I think that sometimes as leaders, it's on your mind, oh, this has to get done. Let me hand that off. And maybe it's not even a big deal of something you need immediately, but once you hand it off, folks are thinking, oh my gosh, okay, so now this must be the priority.
Yeah.
Right. So being able to communicate the urgency behind the things that you're handing off helps folks then understand how to order that in their day.
I love that. That's reminding me of, I was speaking at a conference about workplace communication and talking about in meetings, for example, how important it is for leaders to be decisive about things, right? And because like, we're talking about all these things, but what are all the things that we need to get done? Afterwards, I was talking to a gal who was in the audience. I bumped into her in like the vendor area, and she said, thank you so much. She's like, I wish my boss was here so he could hear you talk about this stuff. I said, well, what was the one thing that really stood out to you? And she said, how important it is that our leaders are decisive. She's like, we're very capable of getting things done, but we don't know what is the most important. And she's like, and with my boss, she's like, I know he's in other meetings, not telling us the things, and we're trying to get stuff done. Right. And so, but it's that decisiveness that can make a huge difference, because then you know what to balance, right? So when you're talking
Absolutely.
about that work-life balance, I was even in my mind thinking about the balance of like all the work things, and how you're like, and sometimes some stuff just drops totally off. And it has to happen because there's something else that's more important right now.
That's right. Absolutely. And the clearer you are in communicating that, the better understanding that person has. And then you get to move the ball along. Yeah. So you're not having to ask, hey, what happened to that such and such? Hey, what's going on with, I gave you this, it kind of eliminates or at least minimizes some of that, because everybody's clear on what now has risen to the top. Because here's what we've done. We've taken the word priority and we've just pluralized it. So now I don't have a priority. I have a list of 10 priorities. And if you have 10 priorities, then really nothing is the priority.
Right.
So use the word in the way that it was intended. Priority means the thing. What's the thing? Don't give me a list of 10 priorities. That means almost, it cancels it out. It almost means nothing.
God bless you for saying that, Deb. It's so true. Every time
we do it all the time.
Like, no wonder people's heads are exploding. Like that emoji where its brain is like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Right. 100%. 100%.
Oh my goodness.
And then I think the other thing that working parents are concerned about is, their career growth and opportunities. Right. Yeah. I know for mothers especially, right? I'm leaving, I'm going out on parental leave. What am I missing? What's coming around that I'm not even involved in, right? What kind of deals? What if I was working on a deal and now I'm out? Am I out of the deal? Like, am I silenced now? What is the onboard ramp when your folks go to parental leave? When they come back, what's the onboard? How do they want to come back in? Do they want to just kind of show up one day and they're back? Do you want a couple weeks for their back, start cluing them back in on meetings? Do they want to start popping back in on certain meetings and aware of what's going on? Like, understand that it's not just on and off. Like, there needs to be some real intention around what does that look like, so that your people who are getting the work done know that they're valued, know that what they're doing, even if they're not physically there, is still important and is still valued. And in fact, it's so valued that we want to make sure that your on and off ramp expresses that to you and that you're aware of it.
I love that. And again, I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show today, because these are things that are very real to getting the body of work done. Right. And so there are a lot of leaders who are like, we've got a job, let's get it done. And let's do it well. Right. And let's enjoy ourselves as we're, heaven forbid, we actually have a good time at work. You know what I mean? But it's like,
right.
Novel idea, but it's like, okay, but these little peripheral things, it's going to impact. Right. And so, and I mean, I'm sure you've got a million case studies of examples of how this has successfully come together. But as we're kind of pulling this conversation together here, Deb, is there one little example that you would like to share? I'm sorry, I don't mean to diminish by saying little.
No.
I
understand.
A small example where here's an example of a leader, an organization who got it, and this is how it actually benefited and helped their team.
Yes, so there's an organization, we would all know the name of it if I shared it, but I won't. But the leader of their parent and caregiver ERG um, is also a leader in the organization, right?
Okay.
It's a VP.
Mm-hmm.
And her taking this opportunity on and choosing to do this allowed her to structure it in such a way, and this is unique. Okay, this is not, most places do not have it structured in this way. But because of her position in the organization, she is able to now take the work that she's doing for the employee resource group. She does it during work hours, right? Many people are doing this after work hours because it's kind of an afterthought. Oh, yeah, if
Yeah.
you want to take that on, go ahead, no problem. Well, because she structured it, it's part of her workday. It's also included in her evaluation, right? Because it's hours out of her day. It's actually forming something that's benefiting many of the employees.
Mm.
And there's also an actual budget for it. So she's able to bring in real experts that can actually support and help their working parents. And so this has been a win-win across the board, to the point where they right now have somewhere around 4,000 working parents in their employee resource group.
Mm.
It's a huge success.
Yeah.
But instead of her passing this off to a working parent that reports to her and saying, yeah, you guys go with that, she's like, you know what? I got this.
Mm-hmm. I love that. What a great example. That's wonderful. And think of all those people that now are able to find their allies and have open conversations, and that's awesome.
And it changes the workplace culture
Mm-hmm.
around what it means to be a working parent.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's the first to say, you know what? I just got a call from the school. I got a sick kid. I got to go grab him.
Mm-hmm.
She's got 5 kids.
Yeah.
So those things make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, when you show up in your humanity, it makes a difference. It allows the people that report to you to almost have a sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I won't be penalized for that. That I won't be looked down on for that. It makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that so much. You're aware of my work around compassion. This is something that I'm really deeply interested in. What would you say is the most compassionate thing we should be thinking about when it comes to the working parents?
That's a good question. I think the most compassionate thing for us to consider is almost the double life that working parents are living, right? And I think we sometimes underestimate the lack of sleep that folks really show up for a full day of work, having slept 3-4 hours some nights,
Mm-hmm.
5 hours if it's a good night. So I think just having a little bit more grace, being a little bit more gracious, being a little bit more understanding, but just being aware that there's a story behind this person that I don't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're 5 minutes late on the Zoom call. Not a big deal, right?
Right.
So where you can offer some grace and where you can kind of just let things go, don't let every deal be a big deal. Be really specific about what's really the big deal and what's one of those things that just might have been an off moment or an off day, and just kind of let it go.
Yeah, I love that. Don't let every deal be a big deal. So good. Oh my goodness. Okay, so as we're wrapping this up, Deb, any last pearl of wisdom, one little thing that you really want leaders to know when it comes to the working parents?
I do. Couple things that I think working parents want you to know. They are committed to their jobs. They need understanding about family obligations without being stigmatized. And I think here's a story that someone told. The CEO of Indeed, I was at a conference where he spoke. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he told this story about it snowed, right? This is somewhere up in, Midwest, somewhere it snowed. Kids were coming to school delayed. There was a ramp for the kids that, were differently abled, and then obviously the stairs. So the gentleman that is there to clear all this off for the kids to be able to get in the building begins clearing the stairs first. Well, the first student to arrive was a student in a wheelchair. So he couldn't get into the building. So his comment to this gentleman was, why don't you clear off the ramp? Because then we can all get in the building. And so I want us to just think about, for those of us that maybe are not yet parents or are not yet caregivers who might say, well, this doesn't really apply to me. It actually does. It really applies to all of us because we're talking about access. Listen, at any given moment, none of us really know what's going to happen. None of us know how maybe a healthy parent or a healthy child, or I had one woman who had made a life decision. She didn't want to have children. Unfortunately, her sister died. She became the guardian of 4 kids.
Wow.
Like, so you just don't know. So even if you're not sitting in the seat of a parent right now, let's just clear off the ramp so we can all get in. And so understanding that, so we're not causing parents, working parents, to be stigmatized. And when we talk about family-friendly policies and family-friendly benefits, let's examine that. I think the figure now is that 68% of employees don't even know what all of their benefits are. If somebody says they're pregnant on your team, make sure HR is connecting with them right out the gate, just to remind them, hey, congratulations, so excited for you. Just as a reminder, you got all this stuff available to you, because many of us don't really even know what our benefits include.
That's amazing. 68%. Wow.
68%.
Wow.
I just found out from that, I'm on my husband's package for benefits. I'm now working with a nutritionist that's covered by the insurance. As I was reading those figures, I thought, well, let me call and see what we have that I don't know about. That's a big number. That's a lot of us.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it's like, oh, you can work with a nutritionist for X amount of months throughout the year, no charge at all. So just let people know, because many times we just don't even know.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating. In the throes of everything that's going on, right? It's amazing how a little bit of information can lead to those answers and that inspiration that people need, right? And they can take care of the things. So I love that.
And here's what McKinsey and Company says: you can experience the great attrition or the great attraction. The choice is yours. And as a leader in an organization, it really is. You can shut that back door as working parents are leaving. You really can make the decision. Do we want the great attrition or do we want the great attraction? And what are some things we need to do to shift it?
Oh, so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Deb, I feel like we could talk about like 17 more things. So much about the working parents. So let's do this. Let's leave everybody with how they can get in touch with you. What's the one good place?
So go over to my website, deborahporter.net. There's some free parenting resources over there. There are a bunch of videos on stuff that I've done that can be very helpful. And then, if you want to step into this a little bit more, if you want to start an ERG, if you've got an ERG and you're looking for some support around that, there's a way to contact me there as well. So deborahporter.net.
.net. Wonderful. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. Deb Porter, thanks for doing what you're doing. Thanks for helping to make this more understood and accessible and smoother for people. So thank you for doing that. And thanks for joining me on today's Top Leaders.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Good seeing you.
Yeah, good to see you too.